Hi everybody, thanks a lot for joining me. This video is kind of coming as the result of a lot of requests and a lot of interest in the ULTA brand, the store brand makeup line. You know, the prices aren't dirt cheap, but they are definitely less than some of the more high-end brands in the store. And overall, I'd say it's more along the lines of a drugstore price range product. And recently I saw that they've come out with some new kind of interesting products, and each one of these sort of tripped off a little thought in my head. I wonder if that's a dupe or trying to be a dupe of a different high-end product. So I'm going to be talking about their makeup blending sponge duo today. They've got a sculpting like contour and highlight stick trio. They've got a strobing face kit of like liquid illuminators, and they also have an eye contour palette that I was kind of interested in. So I'm going to be talking about these and kind of reviewing each one and talking about how it compares to a different high-end product. First off, super excited about this blending sponge duo. Like, I cannot contain my excitement for these little guys. These are so soft, they are so spongy. I mean, I have really kind of gotten accustomed to trying something that seems like it would be close to the Beauty Blender and it ends up being hard as a rock, or it doesn't really absorb water when you put it under the sink. Well, these I would say are actually even softer than my original Beauty Blender sponge. So you get a 2-pack, it's $10. One thing I cannot comment on, because this is fairly new to me, is just the longevity of the product, how well it's going to clean up time after time after time. So that will be something I'll need to update you guys on. But first off, I will show you this side by side with a Beauty Blender when they are dry. You can see that the Beauty Blender is a little bit less chubby. The ULTA sponge is a little bit more full at the base, or the butt end as I like to call it. But oftentimes the way I like to use these blender sponges is wet. So you take them under the sink, you kind of squeeze it a few times, really get it saturated with water, and then you really want to wring it out so you don't feel like you're actually sponging water all over your face, but it can help the blendability of different products. So you look at both of these side by side in their fully, you know, saturated mode, and both of them get quite a bit bigger. I would say the ULTA one is a little bit fuller at the bottom, and it doesn't come to as much of a point toward the top. But just as far as the feel of them, you know, a Beauty Blender is very soft and spongy, and this feels, just the texture, the material feels maybe even a little bit softer than that. For foundation, I think they both do an equally good job. So I used my Maybelline Dream Velvet. It's a matte foundation, and I think it really benefits from a blender type sponge to apply it. And so on my right side of my face, I used the Beauty Blender to get that all blended out. And then I just wanted to show you what it would be like with the other sponge, the ULTA brand sponge, on the left side of my face. And I do feel like I got a really similar result. Again, there's a lot of softness with this ULTA sponge. It's not maybe quite as nimble as the Beauty Blender for getting around the small areas. I also applied my Fiona Styles Peach Corrector under each eye, and the Beauty Blender has a little bit easier time getting around that area. Still, I think it's a little big for the under eye. I prefer, you know, their downsized, like the Micro Mini, or even the new one for blush that's a little bit smaller than this all around. I think it gets around the eye area much more easily. But then over on the left eye with the ULTA sponge, you really kind of have to pinch it or form it a little bit if you want to get right there on the side of your nose. Otherwise, for large areas on the skin, on the larger planes of your face, that sponge really does fine. Did ULTA dupe it? I don't think it's an exact Beauty Blender dupe, because it's just not the exact same size and shape, but it's a really nice quality sponge, and getting 2 for $10, I think you'll be very happy with the softness of these sponges. I also find this to be a little softer than my Real Techniques sponge. The kind of nice thing about that sponge for me is I really like that flat edge that it has, but I do think this is a really good buy. And if you're in the market for something that's a little smaller than this and you want to save, ULTA has something called the Super Blender, and this is the mini size of that, or it's actually called the Small Super Blender, and it's $4.99 for 2. And this is actually a surprisingly soft sponge, and it's just a little more targeted. It's kind of nice for the areas around the eye. I also noticed ULTA came out with this Sculpting Trio, so it's 3 different like highlight and contour sticks. It's $15. One says contour, one says warmth, and one says highlight. There's no shimmer in any of these, so they're just nice creamy shades. And I don't have an exact trio on my hands from a high-end brand that matches up to this, but I do have this thing from Tarte called the Sculptor. So it is, you know, their take on a stick contour product. And while the tone of this one from Tarte can look a little bit more like a bronzer to me and less like, you know, a cool contour shade would be. I do really like the texture. I think it's easy to blend. It's got a little element of sheerness to it that I think kind of helps the product and gives you a nice ease of use with it. So I went ahead and applied the Tarte one on the right side of my face. I just applied a little bit in the hollow of my cheek and also around the hairline. Those are the two main areas where I would do any sort of contouring, and I blended it out with one of my blender sponges. And then I used the, let's see, the contour stick from the Ulta kit, and I used that on the opposite side of my face. I can instantly tell that there's a drier consistency with these. While they do seem to be a little bit more full color, the texture is a bit thicker and drier. So it's going to take a little more effort to blend this out on the skin, and that's something I don't really want to have to work too hard at, especially when I'm going over a foundation. I don't want to mess with that foundation too much. Honestly, I'm not that cracked up about the stick format of a contour product to begin with. I think it's easier to have a nice cream compact where you can dip into that with a brush, get a nice kind of wide sweep of color on the skin, and it'll be easily blended in if it's a good formula. So I think my mascara compact is great for that. I think my e.l.f. cream contour compact is nice for that. And I'm not saying these sticks are unusable, but they're just not, you know, my preferred format. And I went ahead with the highlight stick, and I didn't have like a dupe alternative to this, so I just used it on both sides so you could see how it goes on. Tone wise, I think it's great for brightening, and I do like the fact that it doesn't have shimmer, but again, it's a little bit stiff on the skin, a little hard to blend out. In my experience with products, if it looks dry right after application, it's only going to go downhill from there for the rest of the day in terms of looking dry. Not awful by any means, but not my top pick for cream contouring. Now, when I saw that there's a Strobing Face Kit, and you've got these three little pumps, actually they're pretty good sized pump out products here. It made me think of my Becca Shimmering Skin Perfector liquids, and here you're getting actually half of a fluid ounce in each one of these, so I think that's a pretty good amount. One is labeled bronze, one is rose gold, and one is shimmering pearl. And when it comes right down to it, I think only one of these is a dupe candidate, and that is the shimmering pearl. At a glance on the website, I thought this kind of rosy color might be close to Becca's Shimmering Skin Perfector in Opal, but this is just much more of a blush, and this is very, very deep. So while this is called a Strobing Face Kit, I don't think any of these are all that shimmery. I think that it's a very subtle glow, and to me, they each have a really distinct purpose. So before we get to my Becca comparison, I will start with the bronzy type shade. This has a little bit of a goldeny shimmer in it. It's not a lot. I had to look pretty closely to even detect it, but I kind of liked applying this around the perimeter of my face. I used one of my e.l.f. stipple brushes, and I kind of went under the cheekbone and around the hairline, and I thought it gave a really pretty look, actually. It was easy to blend in. You have enough time to work with it and blend it out, and then once it does get totally blended, it doesn't remain with any sort of weird texture on the skin. And then I used the rose gold shade as my blush, and this is really pretty. I love this shade. I like that it's not too glowy. It's actually rather pigmented, and I just kind of dab that on the apples of the cheeks. I think it gives a really fresh look. You don't even need to be too careful with this product. It's not one of those like, for example, e.l.f. has those liquid HD blushes that are just, you know, you only need the tiniest bit. With this, you know, you can go a little more free with it, and it's not going to look outrageous on your cheeks. Now, I was really interested to see if this Shimmering Pearl was like my Becca Shimmering Skin Perfector in Pearl, and I'm just holding the small size here because I have it from that trio that I got a while back, and they are very, very similar because these are subtle highlights. This one, you know, it's not like it's loaded down with shimmer or flecks of glitter, and this isn't either. It's really, to me, a look of undetectable highlighting. Like, you look like there's a really nice glow on the skin, but it's not necessarily as the result of product that was placed there, you know? So I love that about this product, and I was really happy to see that I got the same effect from the Ulta one. And I think it's important to know that these are subtle highlighting products. This kit is called Strobing, and to me, when I think strobing, I think an intensely highlighted look. These are the most subtle glow products products really in these different liquid pumps that they've put out. I've talked about this before, but if you're just looking for one product that's similar to the Becca Pearl and you don't want to have to buy this full Strobing Face Kit, you might just get this little $1 thing from e.l.f. It's the Shimmering Facial Lip. The shade is called Spotlight. Very, very similar effect to the Becca. Now the last thing I want to talk about, it's called an eye contour kit. So the buzzers rang in my head as Kat Von D calls hers the eye contour kit, you know, the Shade and Light eye contour palette. And I gotta say, the only thing that puts this palette in the dupe conversation is just the title. Because once I got my hands on it, I ordered this online, I looked at the shades and I'm like, okay, this is a matte and shimmer palette. This is just, it's not going to be any sort of dupe of the Kat Von D palette. But I thought I'll go ahead and talk about it in this video, give you my thoughts on it if you were curious about it. It's a 6-color palette. You've got 3 matte browns in here. One says Deepen, one says Dramatize, one says Shape, and then you've got several shimmery shades with one labeled Highlight, one labeled Illuminate. It's very brightening, frosty type shade, and then this one's called Accent, and it's kind of like a rose gold. And the quality of the shadows is decent. I got a nice little look out of it, so I'll show you what I did. I applied a primer first, and then I used the Shape color in the crease just to get a little softness going there. Then I used this warm brown called Dramatize in the outer corner just to build that up a bit more. I used the highlight shade under the brow to just kind of blend that all out, and then I used Accent, which is this rose gold, right on top of the lid. I was noticing quite a bit of powderiness with this shade, but it does give a pretty look to the lids. And then I used Deepen, which is the darkest matte brown, on the outer corner with a small flat brush. I really thought this should have packed on a little bit more color. I realized I was overlapping something lighter, but I thought this needed a little more pigment. And I also smudged that on the lower lash line as well, and just finished the look with a little bit of black liquid liner and some false lashes, and that was that. So it ends up being a very natural, workable look. The texture of the shadows is pretty powdery. You're going to notice them kicking up quite a bit of powder when you initially tap in. Tapping off the excess is a must with all of these shades. My overall feeling on this is it's an okay palette, but it's definitely not one where, oh, you gotta run out and get it. It's so different. If you've got a lot of eyeshadows or eyeshadow palettes, you've probably very likely got these shades already. And the thing that really makes me feel ho-hum about this is the packaging. I feel like they tried, okay? They tried to give us something where you've got this, you know, overlay here of an eye, and it's got the different shades labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so you can kind of see where the placement should go. On the back, there's a little card you can pull out for tips, a more detailed description of what to do. So I think they're trying to make this kind of an educational palette, but here's the deal. This barely magnetizes shut. Like, the magnet is so weak, it just drops open. And then you've just got this very flimsy plastic window there that, you know, you could totally press through it and touch the actual eyeshadows. So all that being said, I think $15 for this is actually asking a little too much. I think there are loads of other things on the market that can give you this kind of a look. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little experiment using the Ulta brand products, and I think I definitely came out with a couple of things I'm gonna really like using, including the Strobing Face Kit. I thought these were really fun, and also the Blending Sponge Duo, 2 for $10, a really nice quality sponge. I think I'll continue using my regular beauty blender and my Real Techniques sponge, but it's nice to have yet another kind of sponge that's workable in the mix, so when something else is dirty you can kind of rotate another one in, and I will report back on how these clean up. Hopefully we don't have any unexpected things happen there. But thanks again guys, hope you're having a great day, and I will see you again very soon. Bye.